So, hi Sophie, thank you for joining us for the packaging and how to market yourself at a premium. So, could you just tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So firstly, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Gemma, for inviting me to speak to your audience today. So as Gemma said, my name's Sophie. I'm a business coach and mentor, and I help service-based female entrepreneurs launch and grow their dream business. So over the years, I've worked with amazing entrepreneurs who are looking to make more money, bring in more clients, grow their business, launch new services, and generally just stand out from the crowd. So I'm thinking that quite a lot of the listeners might be entrepreneurs, or certainly want to be entrepreneurs. And I'm an entrepreneur just like you guys. This is actually my second business. And Gemma and I first met as part of my first business, which was an e-commerce business, which I launched, grew, and then sold last year. And of course, I work with entrepreneurs every day and have done so for many years now. So anything that we're going to talk about today, and any of the tips that I'm going to share with you this afternoon, they come from experience. So I've lived it. I am living it just like you, and I've learned in some cases the very hard way what works and what really doesn't when it comes to life as an entrepreneur. And effectively, I use this to help other entrepreneurs raise their game. And I'm super committed to walking my talks. In the last few years, I've built my own six-figure business. I've traveled the world and worked from places like Miami, Hong Kong, New York, the Maldives, and I've developed a success mindset with a real belief in both myself and the fabulous ladies that I work with, and I use all of that as a basis for the work that I now do. And so yeah, I'm delighted to join you guys and share some of my wisdom.
Fabulous. And it's so good that you've actually been through it and experienced it yourself, because what better advice can you give other than if you've been through it? So that's really reassuring for us. So today we're going to talk about how to market yourself at a premium. So could you just go through why entrepreneurs need packages and how it will benefit their marketing by putting a package together?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. So I think this is probably the number one question that I get asked, like how should I package and price my services? So I think particularly in service-based businesses, a lot of the things we're going to discuss this afternoon could be applied to product-based businesses. But when it comes to packages, this is particularly a service-based business tip. And the key to taking your service-based business to the next level is to stop delivering one-off services and instead create packages. So I'll give an example because it's absolutely the easiest way to explain it. Imagine you want to learn a new skill in a short space of time. And you start researching teachers. So let's say you wanted to learn the guitar specifically to play a song at your friend's wedding. So you start researching teachers and you come across two different adverts. And the first one says, guitar lessons for beginners, £50 an hour. And the second one says, the guitar lesson starter series, learn to play one song in just 1 month, £400. So both options we're going to assume both options are taught by an experienced teacher, and both options offer one lesson a week. But if you look at the prices, the second option is actually double the first. But since you want to learn to play the guitar quickly, and you want to learn how to play this particular song for this wedding that's in a month's time, the second option actually ensures that you'll be able to do so. And so the same goes for your services. Your clients have a specific problem, whatever that might be, and we can discuss that in more detail if it's helpful. And by packaging your services into a system that solves that problem, you'll sell more packages and you can charge more for your services. So I'd suggest that there are two ways that you can package your services. The first one is to focus on one result. For example, the for example, the example that I just gave on the guitar lesson, it's all about delivering a very specific result in a very specified amount of time. And then the second option for packaging your services would be some sort of ongoing support. So it's based on time. So coaching is a good example of that. But unlike an hourly rate where you're saying, I'll do 1 hour of coaching for £50 an hour, what you're saying is that clients have to buy like multiple sessions in one go. So you will coach for 3 months and you'll give a 3-month price, or it will be an ongoing monthly price, for example. I hope that made sense.
So just to clarify, you're saying that if, for example, I'm selling one cushion at £20, it's better for me to sell 3 cushions at X amount because you're selling more but getting more. I don't know if that's a good clarification.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the example works slightly better, I think, for service-based businesses than product-based businesses in terms of packaging. Bundles work in the same way, but it's that same idea. So you could sell 3 cushions for £50 or 1 cushion for £20, and you'd still be making more and making a profit across the 3 cushions rather than selling the 1. So it's about packaging things, be it a product or a service, in order to be able to push up not just the pricing, but also the value you deliver.
And do you think that works well in your experience?
It does, yeah. And I think, again, particularly, and we can sort of talk about it, but I think it's particularly when you understand whatever the client problem is and you're packaging your solution in order to solve that client problem, you're, rather than selling a cushion or an hour of coaching, you're actually selling them a package which solves whatever problem that they have, like learning to play the guitar in a month for this wedding. It's very specific, and therefore people are always more likely to pay more because you're, in the way in which you're packaging and marketing it, you're almost guaranteeing a result.
And from your clients, have you had experience in packaging what they have to offer, and has it worked for them?
I'm a big stickler for packaging products or services, but specifically services, and it's always the better way to go. Ultimately, it's and again, it actually refers to pricing. It's just as hard to get one client to sign up for a package of whatever it might be, guitar lessons or whatever it is, for £500, as it is to find 10 clients who'll pay £50. In fact, it's harder to get 10 clients who pay £50. So the idea of packaging and selling more, whilst it might seem a bit scary to push your prices up and sell that, since you have to sell anyway to one person or 50 people, you might as well actually package it all up and put all that effort into selling that one person, and that works much better.
I agree, actually, and especially because a lot of entrepreneurs are time poor. So if we were to deal with less amount of clients but with a higher volume of work, I think that would be much beneficial for them. They wouldn't stretch themselves so far.
Exactly.
And do you think, especially in the coaching space, I've seen a lot of packages that are around for X amount of money. Do you think that works well for the coaching space?
Yeah, I mean, for all service-based businesses, I think it works really well. I think once you've got a real understanding of your potential client, and what their perceived value is, then it's the best way to sell any service, and yes, specifically in coaching and the type of transformation that you can offer via coaching.
Okay, great. And you were saying about reframing. So could you just tell us what this is?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's important to kind of think about sort of like perceived value. So the first step to packaging yourself, and then indeed packaging yourself for premium prices, is to increase the perceived value so that you can confidently raise your prices, or so you can charge a little bit more. And the key to this is to remember that value is in the eyes of the beholder, so to speak. And of course, the difficult part of this statement is remembering that the beholder isn't you, it's your potential client. So a client's opinion of something's value is what's the most important thing. And that tends to have very little to do with what we call market price, and everything to do with the product or the service's ability to satisfy his or her needs. So we can absolutely talk about reframing and various other tricks to increasing the perceived value. But the starting point, I guess, is to have a really, really deep understanding of who your potential client is, how they think, what their problem is, which we've obviously already talked about, so that you can then package your services or your product and market yourself at that premium price. So I think before we talk about sort of increasing the perceived value via something like reframing, I think it's worth exploring what we mean by understanding your potential client's needs. And of course, you'll be very familiar with this from a marketing perspective. But I guess, no matter what you sell, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's a subscription, you're ultimately selling a solution to a problem. And people, all humans are looking to get their problems solved. So people want, they want to believe they will, that they'll get something, or they'll achieve something, or they'll avoid something, or they will acquire something based on buying whatever the hell it is that you sell. And if you're able to frame yourself in that way, they're happy to pay, whatever for it, in principle. So, for example, we'll use a marketing example since that's your space. If you're in marketing, your potential client might come to you and they might say, I just want my phone to ring off the hook, or I want to be on the first page of Google, or I feel like I'm wasting my money on marketing. And so rather than go to them and sell them strategic marketing or a marketing plan or even some consulting service, what you want to sell to them is the solution to the problem that they're telling you they have. So you want to say to them, well, I'll make the phone ring, or I can get you on the first page of Google, or we'll make your marketing spend go to work. And of course, this comes back to that kind of guitar lesson example. As soon as you start phrasing and reframing, what you're selling as a solution to their problem, it's very easy to package it and it's very easy to sell it for a high price. So knowing who your potential customer is, what their problem is, and then targeting them with the right message in the right place at the right time, that allows you to sell your product, your service, or your subscription, or whatever it might be, as a package and for a premium price. And once you've understood that, you can then start to, or once you've understood your client, I guess, and how they think, you can increase your perceived value so that then, price almost becomes no object. And that leads me on to your question about reframing, because reframing's an excellent way to change the perceived value of a product or service. So an example, for example, would be decreasing the perceived cost. So I don't know, you must have seen this, Gemma, kind of when people are like, oh, you can get, whatever, you can subscribe to my service for the same price as your morning Starbucks. And of course, what you see is that as soon as you kind of compare this subscription to the price of the morning Starbucks, people are like, oh, actually, maybe it's not that expensive. And they're happy to purchase it. You can actually also do this the other way by comparing your product or service to something that is far more expensive. So maybe a good example of this might be if you wanted to whiten your teeth, for example. You have various options. Number one, the cheapest option would be you could buy a whitening toothpaste, for example, for let's say a tenner. Number two, you could buy whitening strips for like 40 quid or whatever. And number three, you could go get like professional like teeth whitening done. And that's like, let's say 400 quid. If you were, in the business of selling whitening strips, so the middle option, you could position yourself, or you could consider positioning yourself against that professional teeth whitening. So the 40 quid for the strips versus the 400 plus quid for the teeth whitening. So our perception is that most likely the professional teeth whitening is going to do a better job because it's more expensive, or it's done by a professional, or it's more time intensive. And honestly, I think it is likely to be more effective. But what you want to try and convince your customer is it going to be 10 times more effective? And therefore, is it worth it that it's 10 times more expensive? So whilst absolutely effectiveness is important, what's more important is the effectiveness per cost, i.e. what we call value. So if we didn't care about like value for money, everyone would be driving sports cars, for example, but most people do think about value for money. So what you want to do in this particular teeth whitening example is you want to position your whitening strips as, not necessarily being more expensive, but being the better value option, so that people are more inclined to purchase them, even though they know that their teeth won't be as good as if they went to a professional teeth whitening clinic or whatever, but it's worth the 40 quid versus spending 400 quid. The third way that you can reframe is tell people the value even if you're selling for less. And that works a little bit like that Starbucks example. So you often see quite a few people then when they're selling their products or their services in packages, they'll put like, value £300 even though they're selling it for £100. And the reason is because they convey the value of what they're selling, or they try to convey the value of what they're selling, and then people believe they're getting a really good deal, like, oh, I'm getting these 3 cushions for £10 off, and people obviously love deals, so it's a really good way of kind of just reframing it in their mind.
Excellent, that's a really, really good example. Thank you for sharing that. Do you find that when you're doing your packages for coaches, do you sell them at, a price where you say, was this amount and now it's this amount, or do you go for the reframing one? What works better for you as a business?
So I personally am not a big fan of giving discounts. Again, anyone who's worked with me will know that I think it's a huge no-no. I'm a big believer in sort of being upfront about the value. So for me, I'm much more likely to do, for example, like the Starbucks example, or compare it to various things and focus on the value for money. Like, yes, it might seem expensive, but these are all the amazing things you'll get from it, versus maybe making it £100 more expensive than it really is and knocking off £100. And that's not to say anything's wrong or right. That's just what aligns, all of the things that we're talking about today work, and they work for different businesses, and you need to figure out what works best for your client. Mm-hmm. I think in a product-based environment, people love a good deal. So offering a discount makes a lot of sense, or doing sales makes a lot of sense, absolutely. But for me personally, and for the clients that I work with, I'm a much bigger believer in framing it as good value, whatever the price is, rather than playing around with the price itself.
Okay. And why do you not agree with discounts?
I think it's not necessarily that I don't agree with discounts as a blanket statement. I think that it does absolutely depend on your client and what your service or your product is. And as I said, I think for product-based businesses, discounts absolutely make sense. For me personally, and if you think about who I work with the entrepreneur rather than with the client. So I'm a big believer in the women that I work with understanding their value and selling their service for their value, not getting into that sort of scarcity mindset of, oh, I won't make the sale if I don't discount it by 50%, and then spending half of their time working for far less than they're worth. So that's why I personally don't discounts, and make sure that try to make sure that my clients don't give discounts. I'm also, again, in coaching, I'm a big believer in transparency. So I think that if you truly believe that your package is worth £1,000, then it's worth £1,000 and sell it for £1,000. Don't put on the website that it's worth £1,500 and then discount it to £1,000. And I recognise, as I said earlier, these things really work and there's nothing wrong with them. But if I look at my industry and the way that I like to kind of package myself and the type of women that I work with and the way I encourage them to package themselves, I'm a big believer in sort of transparency across the board.
Thank you. That's really insightful. So you said about understanding your client before you do anything package-wise. How would you really get to understand who your client is?
Yeah, great question. So I would split it into, well, 3 sections. So the first section would be demographics. So this can be sort of done pen and paper at home, but really understanding the demographic of your ideal client. Is it a female? Is it a male? Are they 40 years old, 30 years old, whatever it might be, and understand that. Once you've got the demographic information of your client, you want to start looking at the psychographics. So why people buy from you. So the psychographic information is, what motivates them to buy. It's looking at what information they consume, how they make decisions, all of that kind of thing. And then the third thing, which we've already touched on, is what is their problem? What's the problem that they're looking to solve? So the way in which, so those are sort of 3 sections that I'd think about in a client, what we call a client persona, which of course, Gemma, you'll be very familiar with. But the idea is you're building up a picture of what your client looks like, how she or he thinks, what they do, etc. So I always recommend that all of my clients build up these customer or client personas. They've got a really good on paper view of who this person is, what information they consume, where they can find them, etc. And then the most important part, and the part that people always forget and are really nervous about, is go out and meet that person. Go and meet the customer, get on Zoom calls, stand on the street if you need to, whatever it might be, but actually validate your assumptions and make sure that if you think that your client is a 25-year-old mum, then actually the 25-year-old mums do want to purchase your product, and more importantly, do want to purchase your product at the price that you're selling it for, so that you can actually build a package, since we've been talking about packages, that suit the person that you're selling for. Because it may be that actually they need half of what you're offering them, but for half the price.
Okay, and exclusivity. How does the business owner or entrepreneur stay exclusive when creating their packages?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So I think scarcity is kind of one of the pillars of modern persuasion. Like, I think people love to think they're getting like some sort of exclusive deal, or that something's running out. That's why when, I don't know, like a designer handbag, let's say like Louis Vuitton do like what's it called, a collaboration with an artist, and only do like 50 of them, like everyone jumps on them. Or when like Victoria Beckham did something with Target, or Rachel Hollis with QVC, like people get really excited by that idea that there's not much time, or that there's not very many of them. So specifically, if you sell a product, you can base scarcity on quantity, for example. So you can be like, how on some e-commerce sites they might be like only 5 left. I think ASOS might do this. So it's that idea that if you want that top, there are only 5 of them left in your size, so you really need to buy it now. And the other way you can do this is a time constraint. So that's why flash sales work so well. So, 48 hours, 50% off, or whatever it might be. So, and if we go back to that Starbucks example, if you think about why people like things like pumpkin spice lattes, it's because they can only get them in that autumn period where they're doing pumpkin spice lattes. So of course, if you normally, the rest of the year, you only have 1 Starbucks a month, but you love pumpkin spice lattes, suddenly you're buying these lattes every bloody day, even though you wouldn't normally do so. That idea that you're, it's the idea that you're creating some sort of scarcity or exclusivity. And I actually really believe that scarcity and exclusivity piece works even better when it's coupled with premium pricing, because I guess people want what they can't have. So if they see this, bag, or they see these cushions, or, that coaching offer, and it's only there for 48 hours, for example, but it's bloody expensive, you almost you don't have time to think. It's like, I've just got to make a gut decision. It's a yes or a no, and you go for it really, really quickly. So that's why exclusivity works really well, and I think works really well kind of combined with that premium pricing piece.
That's great. I really like the example of the pumpkin spice latte. It's so true, because it's not available to you all year round. We do sort of feel like we need to get it now, like especially with that season coming up. So
yeah.
What sort of packages for service-based businesses are you working on for this time of year, with Christmas coming up? Anything exciting?
Yeah, so I'd say certainly in coaching, for example, I think there are two ways in which you can sort of have packages. One is what we call evergreen, where you pretty much have something all the time, and the other one is launches. So I would say that, you know, there are a couple of times a year where it's really exciting to do a launch. September is such a good one because people have that sort of like back to school and like, you know, only 3 or 4 months left of the year, and this idea that there's this big drive to the end of the year. So it's a really nice time to start kind of focusing people on that last, you know, last quarter of the year, or that last, you know, that last couple of milestones until we get into the new year, and really focus their minds. It's a lovely time to do those kinds of launches, like I'll help you reach all of your goals by the end of the year, etc. And it's also a really nice time to start ramping up for that whole January. You know, people obviously, it's a standard time to make goals, be them health goals or business goals. It's a really, really nice time in which to start getting people ready for the idea that, you know, you might do a package. Comes back to what we were talking about earlier. You'll do a 3-month package that will help them, you know, and get their goals done by the end of the year, or a 6-month package for the beginning of 2020 to get the year off to a good start. So it's really worth looking at the psychology of people and how they approach this season, and how they approach the new year, and packaging your products to be able to, you know, and the health industry or the weight loss industry does that so well for January, unfortunately, but they're a good example to use for sort of sales and marketing, whether we do or don't agree with what they do, because they really play on people's fears or people's goals or people's problems, and therefore, you know, it's so much easier for them to sell or for people to buy because it's playing right into what they think that they need.
Fab, that sounds great. So just to summarize on what you've spoken about, you've spoken about the need to create packages for service-based businesses and why it's important to increase the value of them whilst being exclusive and trying to reframe your proposition. Is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I would add a couple of things. I think there's also the other side of the coin, which is reducing the perceived risk. So what people, when they have to part with money to pay for a service or for a product, what they're seeing is like a sacrifice. So, you know, if you're investing, you know, you might gain a new cushion, but you're losing money. So what do is they have to decide whether they want to lose the money to gain the new cushion, or lose the time if it's a time-based sacrifice, or whatever it might be. So when there's a high perceived risk, customers will try to reduce their fears normally by gathering more information and looking for what we call social proof. So a great example of this is Amazon reviews. I think there's something like 70% of customers are more likely to make a purchase from a site that has reviews or testimonials versus one that doesn't. So the last piece to think about is there anything that helps alleviate any doubts they might have or might reduce that perceived fear, is really helpful to do alongside, you know, all the other things that we've discussed. And of course, when the perceived fear is lower, the perceived value is higher. There's a few ways in which you can do this, all quite kind of, you know, basic things, but one is building credibility. There's loads of ways to build credibility as a product-based or service-based business. You can offer money-back guarantees, for example. If you're a product-based business, you can do like free and easy returns policy. Service-based and product-based businesses can do reviews and testimonials, as we've just said. You know, if you've got proof that someone loved your product or service, then show it, you know, show off about it. So it's really important to think about reducing the perceived risk alongside everything else that we might do, because you're still asking people to part with money, you know, even if you position it as solving their problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is all very good knowledge. Well, how do we find you, Sophie, and follow you, and even get your mentoring if we need to?
Sure, yeah. So I think if you want to find out more about me or what I do, I tend to hang out most on Instagram. So my handle's Mrs. Sophie Thorne. so Sophie, Thorne is Thorne. So yeah, please come say hi. I'd love to hear more about you and your business and any challenges you might be having, either launching or growing your business. And I'm super, super happy to answer any questions either about the things that we've just discussed on this webinar, or indeed on any other business related things. So don't be shy. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Sophie. I'll be uploading this to my YouTube channel, so I'll share the link with you shortly.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That's okay. Take care. Bye.